Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Uncork Corner podcast. I'm Nick. I'm here with my co-host Bianca, and we're excited to welcome Dustin today from Gneiss Brewing up here in Maine. Dustin, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us about the brewery and about your history in brewing.
So I own Gneiss Brewing Company over in Limerick, Maine. We started Gneiss back in 2013, so almost 8 years old now, which is a little crazy to think about. We started off as a very German-focused, wheat-centric brewery originally. About 3 years in, we really began to diversify that with a larger production facility and more tanks and getting into more lagering and a little more traditional German style beers. And we've just kind of been going since. But the concept when we started was we saw the IPA craze coming. Not my favorite style of beer. And we wanted to do something different and kind of buck the trend right off the bat. So, nobody was really doing wheat-based beers, let alone German styles, Hefeweizen yeast strains. So we just knuckled onto that and rode it to see where it went. And it's really done well for us. There's definitely a want for those style of beers. And now that we're 8 years beyond when the hop craze really popped and happened, even though it's still around, we're seeing a huge resurgence in people going back to clean beers and older styles and more traditional styles. So it's great to see that finally come back around. And here we are sitting and waiting for it.
And that was actually my entry into kind of the craft beer scene when I was first getting into, drinking outside of the normal domestic stuff. I was always a big fan of like Blue Moon, and I wanted to see kind of the next jump. All right, what is who's making like really good craft versions of this style of beer? So I started searching out and learning more about the different wheat styles and Hefeweizens and everything. Like the Harpoons and some of those other big names, the UFOs. And it's always still going to be one of my favorite styles. I love it. It's just there's no bitterness, nothing harsh about it. It's just a really clean, easy drinking, tasty beer. And sometimes you get some good fruit notes out of it and everything.
To pop in, you really hit it. The lack of bitterness in wheat beers, Hefeweizens in particular, white Belgian whites and things like that is what we find people really gravitating towards. People that don't like bitter, can't handle bitter, they love this style.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just a really easy, fun one to drink without it. Also, it doesn't feel like, if you're drinking, crazy double IPA or something really high in the ABV, it'll hit you. You'll feel it. You'll have one of them and it's like a commitment. You're like, all right, I'm going to have one of these and I'm going to feel it all night. It's going to sit there in my stomach. But this is
the sticky mouth.
Yep, exactly. So it's just it's a really good one. So when it comes to that German inspiration, your name obviously Gneiss, Gneiss, and that style. What came first? Sort of that love for the German beers, and then you spawned the brewery out of that, or did you come up with this great name idea and you're like, oh, let's do German style?
So they kind of came hand in hand. We decided to head down this German road, and while we were thinking that, I'm a geologist by training. I spent 8 years up at the University of Maine in Orono, getting a couple degrees in earth sciences and geochemistry. And gneiss is a type of metamorphic rock. And as we were developing names and what we wanted to do, I wanted to continue educating people. So keeping with the concept of geology, naming some of our beers that way, the name kind of fell into place, and we're thinking Weiss beer, Gneiss Weiss, and that was just it just worked out really well that way.
And have you always been in Limerick, or is that somewhere that you moved to as you've grown over the 8 years?
So actually, the facility has been there the entire time, and I grew up there. I bought 8.5 acres of land from my parents to start this project 8 years ago.
Nice. And so that I'm assuming that's kind of a hometown. That's your parents' were at, or you're just familiar with the area, and that's why you wanted to kind of launch out of there.
Yep, I had moved back from Orono in 2010, worked at a few different places, and by 2012, 2013, I was ready to start my own project and needed some capital somehow, so I was able to get some land from my parents, and that kind of just started the whole process going. And I love it out there. It's the middle of the woods, it's the middle of nowhere. It's very, it's not the city. It's very quiet, it's peaceful. You can disappear and be kind of anywhere you want. You could be anywhere in Germany, drinking the beer at the same time that you're just sitting in Limerick doing it. So it's a great spot. I love it.
Yeah, and I actually have a friend from Boston that's where we're from originally, Bianca and I. She's still down there. I'm up here in Westbrook now. but a friend that had a vacation house nearby, near Limerick, and that's he was familiar with you, and he's how I got introduced. So we wanted to reach out and talk to you. I took a drive out there, and I love the space. Going back where all your picnic tables are in the woods and everything, it just really is. It was peaceful, isolated, kind of in nature, outdoors. But it's definitely a nice way to get introduced to that, and just sit down and have some nice beers. But do you find a lot of the people that come into your tasting room are locals to the area, or more tourists that come up there, or people that kind of take the truck out from Portland area like I did?
It really depends on time of year, but we get a pretty good mix. In the wintertime, we survive off of our locals, our local following. Friday night is really local night. All year round, we get all of our good friends, and everybody lives in the area come out, and they all have picnics together and bring food, and it's really fun to watch. And then by Saturday and Sunday, Portland, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, people on beer missions from all over the place. And then as we get into the tourist season, everywhere in the area really booms because there's just lakes everywhere.
Yep.
So we have a huge Massachusetts collaborative that shows up to their lake houses and spend countless hours out there. So it's really all over, which is great. I mean, it's nice. We get few people from Portland. Getting people out of Portland is difficult.
Yeah, there is a lot of beer over here, and it is a drive. But
so you've been around for 8 years, which means you've produced quite a bit of beer. What are some of your staples that you have, and what does your portfolio of brews look like right now?
So our flagship is Gneiss Weiss. It's what kicked us off. It's what started us. It was a curious endeavor to see, Hefeweizen's summer beer. We knew it was going to do well in the summertime, but we were amazed at how well it did in the wintertime and how well it still does, because it offsets draft lines from your double IPAs and your imperial stouts and all your dark beers. And some people just want something quenching and delicious in the middle of winter. And summertime, it's just so easy to drink. Otherwise, right now, we produce Sonnenschein, which is our Kolsch, which is one we'll be tasting. That makes up almost a third of our entire production, and we only do it between April and August. So it's kind of a turn and burn beer, but it's another really easy drinking summer beer, super clean, very refreshing. Just that Kolsch style is wonderful, and it's a very traditional style as well. We do a lot with our new German Pilsner that we've been working with for a little over a year now, Nord. A little crispier on the hop profile than Wald, which is what I'm having here with my dinner. We started with Wald several years ago, which was a Bavarian Pilsner, a Southern German Pilsner, very soft on the palate. Nord is a Northern German, again, crispier, a little snappier hop profile, which really jives with how people are drinking these days. And it's taken off for us, which is great. Then as far as our year-round beers go, we do Twice, which is a 7% version of the Weiss beer. It's a Weizenbock or strong wheat beer. And Tectonic Tomahawk, which is our white IPA. So obviously we still produce an IPA. It's not like we're anti-IPA, but we don't do New England styles. We don't do juicy hazy. Definitely the hazy because of the wheat, but not like you're thinking. And Tomahawk's done with Tomahawk hops. Gives it an earthy, spicy bitterness, and it's 6.7%. That big wheat component, nice and creamy. So it's a really fun beer, but it's different than what's out there. And we find it to be a little more of a love-hate relationship with it. Either people love it or it's just not their cup of beer. Then we have just a significant amount of one-offs that we've done in the last 8 years that have, just for fun doing things. Some things come back, some things never come back, and you just kind of see how it goes. But part of what I like doing is making beer. Recipe development and making beers true to style is what I love to do.
You're in the right industry for it.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
That's the truth.
So
what was the most difficult, or I guess tricky beer that you found when you were trying to make all those different one-off beers that you're having fun, just kind of playing around? Was there one that was exceptionally difficult for you to work with?
No, I think the most difficult thing for me to brew originally was really gaining a concept of how Hefeweizen yeast behaves. There's a reason that there's not a lot of Hefeweizen breweries. A lot of yeasts are very neutral. They ferment, they make alcohol, they give you some flavors here and there, but they do their jobs and they're really good at it. Hefeweizen yeast is very fickle. You're looking for that cloudiness in the beer. You're looking for these banana flavors, maybe light clove. A lot of that's temperature driven, and then also how we propagate the yeast and reuse it to avoid the beer clearing or it being way too hazy and almost thick and turbid, which we don't want. So it's a really delicate strain. And over the first year of working with it, we learned a lot about how we wanted to harvest it, how we wanted to treat it, how many iterations it could do before it started to evolve and change flavors too much. But otherwise, making beer is kind of the same process over and over. It's just a difference of ingredients. I would say also like high ABV stuff, 8, 9, 10%, where your mash tun is like overflowing with liquid and you're trying to mix it and get it all in there, are fairly difficult beers, but the process is all enjoyable.
Did you start with home brewing and kind of experimenting with these before taking on the challenge of starting your own brewery?
Yep. Yeah. I basically got a second degree in water chemistry. I grew up in the restaurant industry, and I had a friend who was home brewing and started to home brew. And I'm thinking, like this is all water chemistry and soup and food. This is basically what I've been doing for 25 years. So I just got, all of a sudden, I just started brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing, and it got a little out of control in the homebrew scale. And then, I just needed bigger tanks.
Yep. And is that kind of when you discovered that you wanted to go with more of that device style? You wanted to, making what you wanted to drink really is something that we've seen a lot too with other home brewers turn full-time brewers. They just.
Yeah, it was happenstantial, I guess. That summer before I decided that this is what we wanted to do, I was making German beers. I was doing a lot with wheat beers and really having fun with them and really just loving drinking Hefeweizens in the summer. And then put a business plan together. And again, I saw that IPAs were coming. We knew Bissell was opening around the same time, Banded and a couple other breweries. It was a pretty big boom year back in 2013, and there was all very hop driven. So again, me not being a big IPA person, falling in love with the Hefeweizens, it just made sense to go that route.
And outside of the tasting room there that you have in Limerick, where can people kind of get their hands on your beers? Are you in stores anywhere around there people can get the cans? Are you on taps at local restaurants?
Yeah, so we definitely saw a massive consolidation last year with everything that happened. And we were in the process of changing distributors over the last year as well. So we definitely saw our brand reach out for the entire state of Maine and then get sucked back into a very local area. And now, about a month and a half ago, we finally made the move into a new distributorship, and we are just running around crazy trying to get enough beer made for them to put back in, basically Kittery to Bar Harbor. And we're also in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
Nice. So let's get into some of the tasting, huh? That's the part that I've been waiting for.
Drinking a Weiss? Let me go.
Yep, I'm going to start with the Gneiss Weiss, and then we got the Sun and Shine. All right, so yeah, start with the Gneiss Weiss. So do you want to, you're pouring there. I'll have you start and kind of take us through it, the flavors and everything, while I enjoy it and take my first sip. So if you want to talk a little bit about the, making of the beer, the flavor profile, everything for our listeners that don't have it in their hand right now.
Sure. So it's a true to style Hefeweizen with a little bit of an American caveat to it. So we use one of the oldest yeast strains in the world that's produced Hefeweizens for over 1,000 years. It's a 70% wheat malt. And we use for the most part, we use all German malts out of the Weirmann Malting Company in Bamberg, Germany. Again, one of the oldest maltsters in the world, making some of the highest quality grains. Since we make such soft beers, meaning not a lot of hops, yeast component here definitely makes up a lot of the flavor, but in some of our lagers, you're really looking at tasting the grain. So high quality grains are extremely important to us. And then there's about a 30% component of Vienna malt, which is just a lightly roasted barley, lightly malted barley, not roasted. And that's it. It's a pretty simple recipe. The American caveat comes with, when we were brewing it, we added Cascade hops, the hop of American brewing, the backbone of American brewing. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do that was Hefeweizens in the old days, 80s, 90s, were served with a lemon or an orange or some sort of citrus. That in the craft beer industry is now like a no-no. With Hefeweizens and white beers, knowing Rob Todd at Allagash is always, is a funny story with him and those style of beers. But by adding Cascade, it gives you a citrus component kind of built into the beer. So the lemon becomes unnecessary and you get a little bit of that lemony citrus already in the beer rather than the more robust versions that Germany provides.
And that's definitely what I get it when drinking it. The first thing when sipping on it is it's definitely that, it's very light, it's crisp, it's got a great breadiness to it. Super smooth drinking as I would expect it to be. And then at the end there, you're getting that, almost like a residual sweetness on the tongue. That would be like the lemon out of drinking a beer with, adding a lemon to it. So I definitely get what you're thinking there. Bianca, what did you think of this one when you got to try it?
I loved them both. I actually told Nick that it was one of my favorites that I've had in a while. And I like beer a lot, but not every style. And I think that I liked how light and fruity and just like easy on the palate it was to drink. And that was my favorite thing about drinking yours, because it really is just it was a very refreshing, like great, just like after work, I just cracked it and had it. And I was like, this is exactly what I needed. So
great after work beer,
yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Couple of the other things that make it unique are we almost over attenuate it compared to what the German style of the Germans do. So the German Hefeweizens are a little more robust, a little thicker, a little sweeter, definitely catered towards that German palate. This beer for us, we were setting up in Limerick, Maine, trying to get Miller Bud Coors people to drink craft beer. So we kind of took that into account when we did it. We wanted it to be a little lighter, a little cleaner, a little crisper. So we didn't want that sweetness. So we dry it out. We let the yeast do about 80% of the residual sugars, which is a fairly high amount for a Hefeweizen. So it's very dry. And then another thing that was a major learning curve for me was an ingredient that nobody ever talks about, and that's carbonation. Carbonation is, pretty average across the board for most beers. Hefeweizens are special. The wheat gives you a tremendous amount of protein in the beer, and those proteins basically bind together. If you drink an undercarbonated Hefeweizen, it comes off as very thick because of that. So we crank up our carbonation to almost 3 volumes, where most beers have about 2.5 to 2.7 volumes. Just nomenclature there, but it's a fair amount more, which is why it's very like spritzy and kind of jumps off the tongue, and it is just makes it very, very easy to drink. And it just cuts through that wheat protein. And so you get all this great body and smooth mouthfeel, but you also get that relief from the carbonation.
So for comparison, because I always kind of think of carbonation as sort of a bad guy when I'm drinking stuff, because I don't really like the seltzers. I don't like sodas that are like too overly carbonated and stuff. So what would be the volumes that you're looking at in something like that compared to this? Or is it because this is just so thick and the carbonation has to cut through it that you're not getting that?
3 volumes you'll find in hard seltzers. You'll find them in carbonated waters. That's the same thing. But there's nothing to hold it together. So you take that sip and it's just like the bubbles just
bubbly
dance
and fizzy.
Yeah. It's too much.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of carbonated water. We actually do make a line of hard seltzers that we started doing last summer, and that's been kind of fun because I do the same thing. I crank the CO2 up on those, and it's interesting to drink them because it's like, it's more carbonation than I really want. But I'll drink this, and it's the same amount of carbonation, but it's just so much better.
Right. In a different package, you don't get that out of it. You don't get the same sort of, crazy fizziness that's going on with it.
I'm not with you guys. I drink seltzer water like it's nobody's business. That's all I have all the time. I don't even like plain water. So we're in different boats.
Yep.
We all like the beer though. That's what counts.
Right. And that's what makes beer and food fun. Everybody's palate's different because we've seen hundreds and thousands of people come through, and some people are very nice about things and they just, they'll leave a beer behind or they won't say anything about it. And some people are like, ooh, I don't like that, or that's not for me. And it's like, yeah, or I hope I don't offend you. It's like, no, I'm not you.
Right.
That's why we make so many beers. Like, you are entitled to like and dislike whatever you want.
Yep. Everyone has preferences. And that's, I've kind of gotten fatigued with all like the overhop stuff lately. And I've been searching out more like the Kolsch lager that we're going to get into next. That's a style that if I've been going to a restaurant, I've been going to a bar, going out, that's something that I'm looking for typically on a menu, kind of scanning through past all of the IPAs and, oh, what else do they have here? What can I try? And a dark beers are great, especially in the winter and stuff, but they're just so heavy. And again, that's, it's a commitment. It really is the way I like to look at it. And sometimes you just want something easy to drink. And these lagers and the Weiss beers and everything have been definitely hitting the spot in that kind of time period.
Yeah, we do a black lager, Schwarzwald, which is Black Forest. It's actually so this is Wald, which is just forest. This is our Bavarian Pilsner. Schwarzwald is the black lager, and it's a really fun. When people say, they like dark beers or they don't like dark beers because they're heavy, we always are like, oh, you should try a little Schwarzwald, because the black lager is just very clean. It doesn't have that roastiness of stouts and porters, and it has that lagering capacity where it's been sitting for 8 weeks at cold temperatures. Just, all those flavors come together, and it drinks super smooth, very light. And we like to keep that one on in the summertime as our dark summer beer.
Yeah, that would be
for the dark beer drinker that's out there.
Yeah, that's one that I'm gonna have to give a shot to, because one of the good beers that I've had that's sort of along that style was actually Bianca and I took a trip out to Vermont, and I got one from the Alchemist. They had Dark, which is their Schwartz beer. Yeah, and it was I would say similar to that style, if not the same. And I loved it. It was great, but I don't see a lot of those. It's a style that's just not out there on the shelves a whole lot. So it's always tough.
Is easy nomenclature for people. You see black lager or Schwarz beer, and it's like, what is that? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest hurdles that we've had to overcome, really, is, Weissbier and Weizenbach and Weizendoppelbach and black lager. And we actually started just calling it a black lager because people are like, I'm not drinking a Schwarz beer because I have no idea what it is. It's like, it's just a black lager. It's okay. So we do, again, a lot of education, a lot of beer education comes with it, because the German styles kind of really fell out of fashion quite a long time ago in this country, and just became, pale fizzy pilsners that dominated the industry for far too long.
And when it comes to making those dark styles, so what is it that is really making them dark? Is it just the type of wheat or type of ingredients going in, or is it due to the fact that you're roasting those and it's getting the color from, I guess, the roasting of it?
It gets so there's hundreds and hundreds of types of malt. So we use pale wheat and Vienna in the Hefeweizen. We use Pilsner and a couple other malts, very light malts, in the Kolsch. And then you can just keep scaling yourself up. The longer that these barleys sit at higher temperatures and get hotter and hotter and hotter, they start turning red, they start turning brown, they start turning black. So there's roasted barley, which you'll find in a lot of stouts. There's black malts, which are really fun. There's a bunch of different varieties there. We like to use various degrees that are debittered. They actually take the husk off, so it lends boatloads of color, but doesn't add that astringent bitterness that you get with burnt things. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how we get a lot of the color, and that's how we do Schwarzwald. We use these debittered black malts where we can get all this color, but we don't add astringency. We don't add a lot of flavor. We don't add roastiness. Sometimes, roastiness is great, but it doesn't belong everywhere.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, well, let's get into the Sonnenschein next, right. The Kolsch.
That's here. All right. Sonnenschein, just German for sunshine. It seemed to make so much sense. Naming beers is very difficult. You'd think it'd be easy, but you start running into roadblocks for styles. Sometimes the name comes first, and that's the easiest. You develop the beer, but when the beer comes and it's coming down the pipeline, you're like, we need a name, and then we need a label.
On the bright side, because you're doing something that's a little bit different than a lot of the industry right now, it must be easier to not run into the same names as other people. Because we have seen that with some other people where, everyone's making these sort of fruity, hoppy, hazy IPAs. There's only so many names you can take that relate to that. So in tasting this one definitely fits the name. It's really light. It's really crisp. I almost get more of a carbonation on this than I do on the other one from a mouthfeel perspective. But yeah, just really light, sweet. It's a definitely seems almost a little sweeter than the Weiss beer that we had before, but definitely delicious.
I
Yes.
loved it.
Yeah,
Hence why it's gone.
One of my favorite beers. When my wife and I went to Germany, I guess 5 or so years ago now, basically Kolsch comes from the city of Cologne, and Alt Beers, which is a copper ale similar to this, is from Dusseldorf. They're kind of sister cities, but you certainly don't ask for a Kolsch in Dusseldorf, and you don't ask for an Alt Beer in Cologne. They will chastise you and kick you out of town. So when we got back, those are the first 2 beers that I really wanted to work with. And there's a lot of Kolsch's around, but when you get that really nice kind of floral bouquet in the nose, and then it also finished, like you said, it has that almost the perception of a little bit of sweetness and flowers in there. That's a true Kolsch. There's only one yeast in the world that makes those beers, and it comes out of Cologne and Dusseldorf. We import that particular strain in to do these beers because, I'm a staunch believer in tradition when you're trying to make traditional beers, and that flavor is just, what we drank while we were there and what we wanted to replicate when we got back. So you can tell, let's wipe the haze off there. You can tell the difference here. You're talking about a fully clear beer versus, our Hefeweizen, which is nice and hazy. The Kolsch is a fun style because it's an ale. So ales and lagers ferment at colder temperatures, ales ferment at warmer temperatures. Because lagers ferment at colder temperatures, they generally produce some byproducts, mostly sulfurs. That's why they need to lager, which is cold condition. Those flavors get reabsorbed, but it takes 4, 6, 8 weeks for that to happen. So with this, it's an ale, but we ferment it at cooler temperatures. So the Hefeweizen ferments at around 69, 70 degrees. We ferment this at around 63 degrees. And for comparison, we do our lagers around 53 degrees. So that cooler fermentation doesn't give you a lot of ester profile, those fruitier notes that you get from, say, red ales, and what you get in IPAs if it's not overly hopped, which is what lends this to be such a clean finishing, clean drinking beer. And this also just screams summer.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that it really is. That's just a perfect summer beer. And you said this is the one that you have a limited brewing season on?
Yeah. So first I was going to say, I've been working all day. I ended up brewing today and doing some other projects, and I'm just sitting down. So these are my first beers of the day. I'm just like, oh, bye. Oh. So we have found a very specific season for Kolsch. Some beers don't have as much seasonality. Some beers do. Some people drink seasonally. Some people don't. What we've noticed, we tried to push the limit on the Kolsch, which we've been doing for about 5 years. And every year we keep coming back like earlier and earlier in the season for when our last batch is brewed, because by September, we will not sell Kolsch. We won't sell it out of the brewery. We won't pour beers of it. We just get stuck with whatever we have. And it's a really funny phenomenon. It's really the only beer that happens. Usually there's people that will come in and, we'll move the beer a little slower, but it'll be gone. This one it stops. Middle of August to late August, Kolsch stops. Everybody's like kind of fatigued of summer beers. And then you have the Oktoberfest showing up, and you've got some richer flavors coming out, and everybody's just, ready to move to fall. Right? So it's a really interesting phenomenon that we've noticed.
And
especially up here with the weather changes. It's like your tastes change with them.
Yeah. But then again, you might have a 30-degree day in July up here too. So
also true.
Yeah.
Well, we just had was it 81, 82 degrees today?
Yeah. And then it was like 80 yesterday too. It's nuts. And then it'll be in the 40s, 50s again next week. But
well, we did wait a long time for it. Early May was still pretty cold. So
yeah, being a German-inspired, German-style brewery, do you have a lot of those, fall, that Oktoberfest, style beer? And what are those? Give us a little bit more info on those, and how you work them into your lineup.
Yeah, so we do our alt beer, which is the copper kind of equivalent of this beer. We do that as the sort of later into summer to allow for an easy transition, because again, same thing, ferments a little colder, doesn't have as much sweetness or ester profile as a red ale would, but it's copper in color. It's a beautiful beer. Finishes with a little bit of like cherry wood smokiness to it. Also, again, one of my favorite recipes in beers. And then we're actually it's already on the schedule because it takes us about 10 to 12 weeks to do our Oktoberfest, which is our Marzen beer. Will be brewed next month and then lager in the tanks until the beginning of September. And so that'll come out this year. For us, it'll be the first week of September. In the past, we've always tried to release it on Oktoberfest or the date that Oktoberfest starts. But we find now that these Marzens and Oktoberfest styles are showing up at the beginning of September. So if we're not putting ours out at the beginning of September, we kind of get lost in the melee that is Oktoberfest.
Yep.
And that's another style that's like, you have 6 weeks to sell whatever you make.
Yeah.
And then by early to mid-October, nobody's buying Oktoberfest anymore. It's a funny style.
And once you get past that, what are people moving into kind of seasonally? Once you hit around, Thanksgiving into November, December, is that switching? Do you see a full kind of stop where people are starting to head towards those stouts and porters, or is there anything sort of in between there?
I mean, we brew a little bit of intermediary stuff, but we definitely see stouts, porters, and the further you get into winter, bigger stouts, bigger porters, barrel aged bourbon stouts, things like that. So we've started trying to time up. We have a big event, local business event in November that goes on every year, and we've been doing beer releases for that weekend. And we did a bourbon barrel aged imperial stout a few years ago, and this year I think we're planning on doing a Baltic porter. An imperial Baltic porter. So it'll be a 9% lagered porter.
Nice.
So again, same sort of concept where you don't get so much richness and sweetness as you would a porter with an ale yeast. You're going to get a much cleaner profile, but at the same time, it's a big one.
Yep. Dark, heavy, higher.
And that'll be
ABV.
beer for us, and we're pretty excited for it.
Yeah, that'll be another fun one to try too.
Yeah,
I'm excited to get back out there and have some beers at your brewery. Last time I was there, it was real windy. I got caught on a real windy day, so I didn't get to hang out outside and have some beers. But I did get to meet the cat that roams around outside. Yeah. Awesome cat. It was the most dog-like cat I've ever met. Came over, laid down for belly rubs. It was it was awesome.
She's the best of both worlds.
The beer garden. Can you tell us a little bit about the new food option that you have and how that came to be?
Yeah. So we have a food truck on site Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all summer long. Hopefully we'll be adding Thursdays in the heat of summer this year. And we just by happenstance and a friend of ours who reached out said his brother-in-law was starting a food truck and thought it would be a neat place. And we ended up touching base with him, and he came out and he was all about it. He loves the woods, loves being out here. He was chef de cuisine at David's. He's been up and down the seacoast. He's got quite a resume, and he makes some fantastic food.
It looks amazing. And do you actually give recommendations on what to order with certain things, or is it just kind of a...
So he's just finished his second weekend, and he evolved his menu. He worked very closely with my wife, who runs everything else but the brewing in the business. And he reached out, gave her the menu, and she was like, "So, being a German brewery, you may want to think about some German-centric things. People come here and they like that." So he turned around and was like, "Oh, that's great feedback." Shot us another menu, and now he has got Spätzle mac and cheese, which is like a homemade pasta. He's doing a chicken schnitzel, cucumber salad, German potato salad, a whole bunch of these things that now have a wonderful, harmony with our beers. So as the time goes on, we definitely have more and more pairing options going. And I know he's going to evolve the menu as the season gets really rolling here, but we are super excited to have him on site. And we actually break ground tomorrow on a full-blown beer garden excavation project.
Wow.
Hopefully, by middle of next week, we will have a fully hardscaped, terraced, and all sorts of new features out in the beer garden.
That sounds amazing. Nick and I are definitely going to have to make a trip because I didn't get to go the last time.
No.
So I'm coming along, Nick.
Yep.
You're gonna get it, buddy.
I always have to drive down to you. Get your ass up here. Come on.
That's it's fair. It is fair.
It's not that far. Are you right in Boston?
No, I'm actually we're up near Ipswich.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we're pretty far up in the North Shore. I'm really not that far.
No, it's
No.
not.
No.
You got, what do you got? It's like an hour 15
winter,
probably
you
up
know.
to me. So
Nobody wants to sit outside in the winter, so we usually just exchange cans. But now that the warm weather is coming and it's a new year and we're not as worried about being
things will be
together
opening
anymore.
back up. Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
be
it's,
getting out more. For sure.
It's an exciting time right now. We're actually getting ready to reopen indoors this weekend. It seems like it happened really fast, but at the same time, it's been evolving for so long. So we've been constantly looking into how we're doing it, and we're just getting all of our signs ready and all that stuff. We're going to remain masked indoors for the time being because our indoor space is a little bit smaller, and we have a 4-year-old daughter, some immunocompromised staff and everything too. So
and it's fine to do that way, but yeah, it's good to be able to have that extra capacity that you can get people inside and just it gets rid of that sort of, oh, I want to go out, but the weather's kind of cold today or it's kind of windy. It'll give you that option as people can go and they'll still be able to enjoy the beers indoors and everything. So that'll be nice. Looks like Bianca's having some technical difficulties back and forth right now. But
my computer just shut down on me. I don't know what happened.
Nice.
It's on my phone now.
Yeah, I got my technical difficulties out of the way before we started. And I don't touch anything.
That is true. I should have been more prepared.
Oh,
nice. Well, I think Bianca's signaling the end of this. So tell us before we head off where people can find your beers and your brewery online, in social media and everything like that, so they can check you out for themselves.
Yep. It's Gneiss Beer, GNEISS beer.com. And the handle is @NiceBeer for all Facebook, Instagram, and all that jazz. We keep everything pretty up to date on the social media as far as Instagram and Facebook go. The website has our draft menu, our to-go list, our merchandise stuff, because we kind of evolved into doing all of our menu things online last year with the pandemic. So it does have a lot of information as far as what beers are served, all the pricing, all that stuff. But if you want to follow, Zwickle the Cat, the excavation project outdoors, take a look at the food we're doing, the beers we're doing. That's all on Instagram.
Awesome. And I will have links below to the website and to the Instagram so everyone can go check that out. But thank you again for taking the time to join us. We love the beers. Bianca, I told you she drank them all before the podcast, but I enjoyed them tonight for the first time, and I was definitely very happy with them. So I'm looking to come get some more in person and hang out at the brewery. Cheers.
We look forward to coming back in person for sure.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Be sure to follow us on social @Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.